Discuss the character of Anne Elliot in Persuasion by Jane Austen. Marks 10-12. Answer. Critic John Bailey aptly writes, "There are few heroines in fiction whom we love so much, feel for so much, as we love and feel for Anne Elliot." Jane Austen herself refers to Anne in one of her letters as a heroine who is almost too good for me. At the age of 19, Anne falls deeply in love with Frederick Wentworth but rejects him under the pressure from her father and following the advice of Lady Russell, whom motherless Anne has respected as her mother so far. Anne's submissiveness to them at the age of 19 is perfectly understandable and cannot be regarded as a weakness of her character. Anne's subsequent regret, for a long time, mars every enjoyment of her youth. Anne is a simple-minded, warm-hearted, accomplished woman with a delicacy of feeling and a sense of humor. But it is perhaps because of her passive nature that Anne is neglected and ignored in her family. In spite of her elegance of mind and sweetness of character, she has no weight to her vainglorious family. The most striking quality of her character is her constancy in love. Although she was made to reject Frederick, no second attachment has been possible to the nice tone of her mind and the fastidiousness of her taste. She turns 27 and still remains unmarried. Her heart again begins longing for Frederick when he happens to pay a visit to his sister and brother-in-law at Kellynch Hall. Among the social assets of Anne is her musical talent. She plays much better music than either of the Musgroves sisters. Her literary temperament is seen in her discussion of the poetry of Scott and Byron with Captain Benwick. She expresses a very sound opinion when she urges Captain Benwick not to read only poetry and recommends a larger portion of prose in his daily study. Anne is totally free from snobbery which afflicts her father and her sister Elizabeth. Her father taunts her on her visiting a poor widow, Mrs. Smith, but Anne feels no embarrassment in the matter. Anne, at many times, gives evidence of a considerable knowledge of human life and human nature. She shows her human insight in her suspiciousness regarding Mr. Elliot's motives in making up with Sir Walter and Elizabeth. While Lady Russell is deceived by Mr. Elliot's elegant manners and pleasing behavior, Anne has a distinct feeling that there must be some selfish motive behind Mr. Elliot's amiability which she thinks to be a pose. With her powers of observation and her perceptive judgment of human beings, Anne combines a tendency to reflectiveness. When she is alone, or when she has leisure, she tends to indulge in reflecting upon her own circumstances and also on situation in which others are placed. It is in the course of the conversation with Captain Harville at Bath that Anne gives a free expression to her pent-up feelings. It is this conversation with Harville that serves as the final incentive to Captain Wentworth's spirit and compels him to renew his proposal of marriage to Anne. Although Anne has deeply suffered during the 8 years of separation from Frederick, she still does not think that she was wrong in accepting Lady Russell's advice 8 years ago. She says, "I was right in submitting to her, and that I had done otherwise, I should have suffered more in continuing the engagement than I did even in giving it up, because I should have suffered in any conscience." A close perusal of Jane Austen's All Heroines shows that Anne is more mature than the other heroines. Professor W. A. Craik opines that Anne's attitude very nearly coincides with the author's. She is not so astringent as her creator, but very nearly as understanding, and very nearly contemporary. She therefore bears easily her part of the narrative and of the moral comment. Anne is always perfectly right, and she is known to be so from her first appearance. Craik also remarks, Anne is an easier character to understand than the other heroines, since her remarks are only very rarely ironically at variance with Jane Austen's. and it requires less of that mental alertness, which Jane Austen so habitually demands, to appreciate her. Anne generally appears more by what she thinks than what she does. Finished. Please subscribe to the channel for more updates of ready-made notes on English literature. Also, please share this channel to help any student pursuing a degree in English literature.